Hello, everyone. Sorry about my voice. I have a cold, beautiful spring cold. But I wanted to give you guys my update for how the month of April went. So I'll start with a few stats and I'll put them up on the screen here. But in the month of April, I had a really good reading month. I read a total of 11 books. I only had one DNF, and I read about half of it before I DNF'd it. My partial reads, I had 4 partial reads. One of those was the DNF, and then the other 3 were carries over for this month. My percentage rereads year to date is 9%, so I'm still keeping it down fairly low, which is my goal. And my average rating this last month was 4.0, so it was a pretty good month. I had a couple of 5 stars, and then the rest were a little bit lower. And I read from 7 new authors, which is fun. I'm discovering more new authors that I enjoy. So if you look at the little chart, I ended up with 2 5 stars. I had 2 4.5s, 2 4, and then 5 that were less, 3.5 or less. And I don't believe I had anything below a 3 this month, so that was good. The book types that I read, again, 8 were novels. I finished 2 short story collections, and I finished 1 nonfiction. And then the places that I acquired the books, I had 5 from the library and 6 were ones that I owned. So I'm staying right around that 60-40, 50-50 mark, which is where I kind of want to be, where I'm utilizing my library and getting to read a lot of newer things, but I'm also reading the stuff that's on my shelves that I haven't, that I have had for years or that I've just recently bought. So there's two reasons why I'm doing that. One is to read through stuff that I've had for years and decide whether I actually want to keep it. And then the other one is to read the new things that I've purchased. So that's why I like to keep that. So I'm using both. And then my book format this month was all physical, which is fairly normal for me. I have been doing a little bit more audiobook listening and ebook reading. A couple of the partial reads this month were audio and ebook, but overall the ones I finished were physical books. I did read 6 series books, which is one of my goals. However, I also started 4 new series, so only 2 of them were continuing series, but I still did continue 2 series, so that's good. And my top genres this month, surprisingly, sci-fi was the top one, and then historical. So I didn't think I read a lot of sci-fi, but it turned out that I'm dabbling in it, and I ended up reading, I think it was 3 sci-fis this month. And I read 3 sci-fis, 2 historicals, and then the rest were kind of spread out over other genres. So that's the stats. So now let's take a look at the books I read. And for this month, I'm going to go through them in the reverse order of how I finished them. So we'll go with the most recent one, and then we'll move our way back. So the last book that I finished in April, was Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This one I gave 4.5 stars. This book you're following 2 main characters. One is a rebel named Kelsier, and the other one is a street urchin who becomes part of the rebellion, and her name is Vin. In this world, the world has been taken over by a person called the Lord Ruler, and he is supposedly immortal. And the people who are the lower class, they're called the Ska, they are very, very oppressed, and they've been oppressed for 1,000 years. But there is a rebellion building. And the magic in this world is really cool. I really enjoyed the magic system. It's all based on metals. You have characters that there's, I think, 8 main metals, and certain characters can burn a certain metal after they ingest it. And then that gives them special powers. And then there are people who are called the Mistborn who can actually burn all of them. So that's kind of the magic system, and it's very, very interesting. I really enjoyed the magic system. I gotta say, this book was a wild ride from the beginning to the end. I didn't really find any dull points in it at all. It was a very wild ride. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of interesting concepts dealt with. There was a lot of issues around class culture and also around the convincing people how to actually fight back when they've been pushed down for so long and all that. And so that was really cool. And just in general, I really enjoyed the characters. I'm really looking forward to continuing this series. This is the first one in our Cosmere read through that we're doing. So my sisters and I. So finished that one and gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed that one. The one I finished just before that was Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. Now this one was a time travel science fiction. Now the general gist of it is that it takes place in about, I think it's 2050. And they're sending, they've perfected time travel now, and they send people back into history to study it. So they're historians. The main character is a young girl named Kivrin, and she is in her university years anyway. And she convinces them to send her back to the Middle Ages, which is an area that they've never sent anybody back to because it's considered extremely dangerous because of the plague and all of that kind of thing. So they send her back, and then immediately after that, one of the technicians who is working on the project falls over seriously sick, and it brings on a pandemic or epidemic in the city. So half of the story is present day, and they're trying to figure out where this came from, what happened, and everything. But they're also trying to figure out how to get her back because things have all gone wrong. And meanwhile, you're following her story, and she's back in the Middle Ages in, I believe it was the 1300s, and has to try and figure out where she is, what she's, and when she gets there, she's suddenly sick. So there's all this stuff going on with that. You meet all these different characters. She has to help in some serious crises, and meanwhile, they're trying to rescue her. So it was a pretty good book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I found that I didn't really care about the characters that much. It was very plot driven versus character driven. I've read some more character driven novels here recently, and this one was very plot driven, which was okay for me in this context because there was a lot of, with there being a pandemic in the present, and then with her being back in the time of the plague, there was a lot of death and destruction and whatnot. And so being not overly attached to side characters was probably a good thing. The writing was good. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the fact that she interspersed bits of humor into it because it was a fairly heavy subject, especially having come through a pandemic ourselves. The one thing that I did find that was really kind of disturbingly funny was that this is supposed to take place in 2050, and supposedly previously in the 20th or 21st century, they had a pandemic that took over the world and killed a lot of people. And there's a reference in here to the one character. He's all concerned about the fact that they're running out of lavatory paper and all this kind of stuff. And there was several other references that about different countries' reactions to the idea of a pandemic and all this kind of stuff that were freakily accurate to what happened in 2020. And then I looked at when this book was written. This book was published in 1992. That is actually kind of disturbing. But anyways, overall, it was a pretty decent book. I did give it 3 stars, and I am going to try and continue the series because a lot of people have said that the second book in the series is actually their favorite. So I do want to at least for sure read the second book in the series, and then I'll decide whether I want to keep going. I think it's a 5 or 6 book series that I know of anyways. The one I finished before that was this one, Stories of Suspense, selected by Mary E. MacEwan. This was my short story jar pick for the month, and it contained a lot of older short stories. It had the original short story of The Birds by Daphne du Maurier. It had the original short story of Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, and then it had ones by Jack Finney, Shirley Jackson, people like that. And I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars based on my ratings of each story. I had 1 5-star, and that was Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. I actually really enjoyed that little story. It was very interesting. The short story is just the main character's journal entries. So you see him, he gets this medical procedure that's supposed to make him smart. And then you see him going from being very low IQ to suddenly being, over time, short period of time, being a very, very high IQ. And then when things start to go wrong, you are also following his journal for that. And I found that one really, really interesting. It said a lot about how we treat people based on like their intelligence levels and everything, and how we look at people and just in general, and what the risks are with doing certain experiments on humans and everything. So I would actually like to read the novel version, because apparently he expanded it into a novel, and it sounds like that would be really interesting, because I really enjoyed that one. The Contents of the Dead Man's Pockets by Jack Finney. That one I gave 4.5 to. That one was super interesting. There was a few 4s, a few 3s, and then there was one that I gave 1.5 to, just because I didn't really care for it that much. So overall, 3.5 stars. Then I had finished We'll Prescribe You a Cat by Siu Ishida. This is one of my ones that was largely anticipated this year. I bought it last year and I hadn't gotten a chance to read it. And I was really looking forward to it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And you're essentially following these, I think it's 3 or 4 different people who find themselves being referred through a friend of a friend of a friend to this clinic. It's called the Nakageo Kokoro Clinic for the Soul. And it's found by people who are struggling and can't figure out what's going on wrong with their life. And there's a secretary there, and then there's a receptionist, and then there's the doctor. And they are both very interesting characters. And what the doctor does is he prescribes people cats. They have to take a cat home for a certain length of time, and then that is supposed to help them. And one way or another, it changes their life. And it was very heartwarming. It was a very, very good story. I laughed out loud at certain points in it. And then there were other parts where I actually cried towards the end. And there is a second book that is coming out. It's being translated, I believe, now. And I definitely want to read it. It was very good. Of all the translated fiction that I've read recently, this one was probably one of my favorites. I would probably put What You're Looking For is in the Library as my number 1, because that one just hit me the right way. But this one, for just pure enjoyment level, this one was probably one of my highest ones. So I definitely recommend that one. It was super fun. Then I finished one, which I had out from the library, so I'll put it up on the screen here. It was Ace by Angela Chen. Now, this was a book on asexuality and the place that people who are asexual have in society. And it dealt a lot with things like how there's compulsory sexuality in our societies, where if you're not interested in having sex, and if you don't have that sexual attraction to people, there's something wrong with you, and all those sorts of things, and dealing with that. And then talking a lot about different people who are ace and their experiences. And I found it a very useful book. It was very helpful. I am asexual myself. And so I found it to be very interesting, a lot of good information. I would like to read more on the topic, and certain parts of the book I would like to look more into, where she kind of just touched on certain things. I'd like to actually look a little bit more into that, because I'm curious. There were some parts of her writing style that didn't work quite as well for me as some writers that I've read. But overall, it was a very useful book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was definitely an interesting read, and I want to read more on the topic so that I can kind of get a better understanding of my own sexuality. So then I had, yes, I promised you guys last month I would get this read this time. I finally read The Lords of the North by Bernard Cornwell. This is the third book in his Uhtred of Bebbanburg saga. And this is the one that I said I was looking forward to the most because I thought that Uhtred and his friend would probably be going to get some revenge for some things that happened in the first book. And I was right. So in this one, it's 878, and you're following Uhtred again. This takes place pretty much right after the second book. So he was fighting in battles for King Alfred of Wessex, and he ends up in this one going north, where he is going to try and look into like getting some revenge and everything for things that have happened in the past, back towards Northumbria, where he is originally from. And there's chaos in the north. It's a very chaotic place, and a whole series of events happen, and you get to follow him trying to get his revenge, and he gets betrayed, and then there's all kinds of other stuff that go on, and it was a very, very good book. Bernard Cornwell, like I've said multiple times, is such a good storyteller. He really just grips you and keeps you going, keeps you reading, and I think of all of the ones that I have read so far this is the third one in the series. This was actually my favorite so far. I really, really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the plot in this one a lot. And of course, I really enjoy Uhtred's character. I love his voice because he's telling the story from the future as an old man. And so he's telling you the story. So then he'll talk about certain characters and things that they ended up doing over time. And just his little comments about some of the things that, well, I know what actually happened and it's this. And it was just really, really good voice. I love his voice for Uhtred. So really, really enjoyed this one. This was one of my 5-star reads this month. And I highly recommend this series so far. I am going to keep reading the next one. I don't have it on for this coming month, but I need to get a copy of it because I don't actually own the 4th one. I have the 5th one, but I don't have the 4th one. So I need to get a copy of it, and then I will be reading that one. Before that, I finished The Survivors by Jane Harper. Now, this was the only Jane Harper that I haven't read yet, and it was excellent. Again, I love her writing so much. She has this ability to take characters and she creates these characters that are broken or damaged kind of, and makes you care about them so much. I found that her characters are just so good. I cannot wait for her to write some more. This was the last one that I hadn't read yet. And in this one, you're following Kieran Elliott. And when he was a teenager, there was a huge event that happened and a mistake that he made that essentially destroyed his life. And now he has come back to his hometown with his girlfriend and their new baby. And he's come to see his parents and help them move because his father is in poor health. And then, of course, coming back to his hometown, there's still people from his hometown there and everything. And they start interacting, and the secrets the issues surrounding that event in the past start surfacing again. And then a dead body is found on the beach. And that brings everything into kind of overdrive for the long-held secrets from the community and everything. So again, really, really excellent. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Basically, what I would say for her books is my absolute favorites, my top 5-star books were The Lost Man and The Dry, which is the first one in the Aaron Falk series. And then I would say that Force of Nature, Exiles, which are the other 2 Aaron Falk ones, and The Survivors all come right after that, because I love her books. She is such a good writer. I cannot recommend her enough. Again, if you like characters that you really, really feel for and you just want them to be okay and you want to help them with their emotional issues. She is so good at writing that. So Really enjoyed that one. Gave it 4.5 stars. It would have been 5 stars, except that I was kind of comparing it to my other 5 stars this month and to the other Jane Harpers that I'd read. And, I gave The Lost Man and The Dry 5 stars, and those ones were just that little step above. The other 3 are just a teensy bit lower in my enjoyment scale, but I loved all of them. I love all her books. Before that, I read what may now be my favorite book of the year, I think. I absolutely adored this book. It's the only book that I've read yet this year that I immediately wanted to go back and reread. And I actually, the next day, I did reread a good portion of the ending again. And that is Scarlet by Stephen Lawhead. This is the second book in his Robin Hood trilogy. The first one is Hood, then there's Scarlet, and then there's Tuck. And honestly, if this series ends well and he doesn't do anything damaging to my main favorite characters, this is going to be a new all-time favorite series. I absolutely adored this book. This one follows Will Scarlet, who he is in this world. He's taken the Robin Hood tale and transplanted it from England in the 11 or 1200s to the time of just after William the Conqueror. And Wales. So your main character, your kind of Robin Hood character, is Bran, who is a prince of a small Welsh kingdom. And then you have, in this one, you're introduced to Will Scarlet. He is a forester who is a Saxon, and because of rebellions and stuff that went on, his lord that he worked for was murdered and his land sold off by the king. So Will and a bunch of other people all escaped to the forest kind of thing. And then he's making his way across the country trying to figure out what to do with himself now that he can't work where he was anymore and he has nothing basically. And as he gets towards Wales, he starts to hear about the legend of Bran. And that's King Raven. And so he goes looking for them because he wants to meet them and just see if that's something that he wants to help with. And then through the story, of course, he meets them and a bunch of crazy things happen. But the whole premise of this story is that it's told by him. He's talking to a priest who's recording his story while he is in prison waiting to be hung. And so he is... he's kind of dragging the story out a bit to try and give himself more time to be alive, basically, before he gets hung by the sheriff. You're reading the whole, first, 2/3 of the book is him telling his story, and I love his voice. He has just the best voice. He was my favorite character. I absolutely adored his voice. It was just so strong and so... he seemed like such a genuinely nice person and just easygoing. And I don't know, I just loved his character. So the first 2/3, you're following his story that he's telling this priest. And then you get to the end of his story and you get to the part where then now he is going to be hung. And then things go even crazier, and my heart was just being wrenched out because I was just oh my God, because I loved him. I fell in love with him so much. And then, of course, more things happen. And, if I liked the book, you kind of probably can guess that what happened and didn't happen. But anyways, I absolutely adored this book. Again, I picked it up as soon as I was done. I wanted to reread it, and then I picked it up again and reread the last third of the book, essentially, the next day, just because I absolutely loved it. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks after I finished it too, which, that says a lot for the book. So this month I'm actually going to read Tuck, which is the third one in the series. And like I say, as long as the characters that I've gotten attached to all are handled correctly and don't end up having horrible things happen to them in the end, this is going to be an all-time favorite series, and I'm hoping to reread it during my birthday month. So that one was my best book of the month. I gave it 5 stars. Definitely, I would have given it infinity stars if I could have. Then before that, I finished reading The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. Now, this one was a science fiction one, And in it, you're following this woman named Nia. And she travels across this area of space called the Pocket. And so for her, a trip of 4 months across the Pocket is in real time. In the rest of the world, or the rest of the universe, is like 15 years. And so she travels to these outer planets and takes their harvest that they do and then brings it back to be sold in the main space stations. So you're following her story. And then you're also following the story of this boy who suddenly one day ends up on this planet. There's this crashed spaceship. He's outside the spaceship, but he's uninjured. But he has no memory of, or he can't talk anyways. So he can't talk, and he seems to have no memory of anything. And so then when Nia comes to pick up the harvest, they send him with her. And then there's also this other woman who was the one who like created all the space stations and everything when Earth was collapsing. And then through technology and everything, she has lived for like 1,000 years. And she's another character in it that you're following as well. And there's something special about this boy. And so she sends Nia and her crew out to the far reaches of the Fringe, it's called, until the boy gets older, and then she's going to bring him back to try and figure out this special power that he has. And overall, it was an okay book, but I found that the characters to me felt too distant. I just really didn't really feel anything for them. The writing was good, but I really didn't like the last about quarter of the book. For me, it went from being kind of a more about this little group of people to all of a sudden being like on this cosmic scale and huge jumps in time and all this kind of thing. And it completely lost me at the end. By that point, I just didn't care, and I didn't like the ending. I mean, it was, for what it was semi-satisfying, but it was just overall, I just didn't care for it that much. I ended up giving it 3 stars because the writing is good. And there were some really nice descriptions and that sort of thing. But overall, story-wise and plot-wise and character-wise, it just wasn't my thing. Other people may enjoy it. I am going to still try. I want to possibly still try and read his one, The Spear Cuts Through Water. It's a fantasy that I've heard a lot of people talk about. And I've been told that a lot of people who didn't like The Vanished Birds liked The Spear Cuts Through Water. So that's why I kind of want to possibly give that one a try as well. But that one I did give 3 stars to. Before that, the second book that I finished this month was Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. And this one was another historian time travel book. And I'm kind of starting to discover that that's a little bit of a genre that I'm kind of enjoying. In particular, I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I enjoyed it more than the Doomsday book, but it was a little bit more of adventure and it was kind of a bit more of a crazy adventure sort of thing with a lot of loose cannon characters versus the other one, which was a little bit more straight-laced kind of thing. And so I think that's part of why I enjoyed it. There was parts of it that were quite over the top, and it reminded me a little bit of things like Veronica Speedwell or the old Amelia Peabody historical mysteries or that kind of thing, where the characters are just kind of they're meant to be over the top, and they are. And the things that happen are meant to be kind of crazy. And it's a long series, and so I am going to try and continue the series. I did really enjoy it. This one, you're following this woman who decides that she wants to join this college, and she's invited by her one of her teachers from high school who now helps out at this college called St. Mary's. And she's invited to come and see the college and everything, and she quickly discovers that things aren't all just like, it's not just a regular university or anything. And so she becomes a trainee there, and she becomes a historian. And what the historians there do is they go back in time to various time periods, and they do on-site research. So she ends up going in this team back in time, but it's very dangerous because history itself won't let you change things. So there's been times where, like, there's an example of times where a person has, been about to do something that would change the course of history, and like a giant cement block falls on them from a building or something, like history won't let you change things. And so that's kind of the basic premise of it. And then this whole big adventure starts, and there's these people from the future that are trying to mess with things in the past and all this kind of stuff. And it was a very fun ride overall. I would say it was a roller coaster from the start to the finish. And I definitely want to continue that series. So I gave it 4 stars. And the first book that I finished this month was my short story collection for the month of March, which I hadn't quite finished. And that was Man Descending by Guy Vanderhaeghe. This one I ended up giving 3.5 stars. That seems to be kind of, in general, what I tend to give most short story books, because what I do is I rate each story out of 5, and then I average that. So I always have some stories that I like more than others. This one here was a pretty average book. This is Man Descending by Guy Vanderhaeghe. I love Guy Vanderhaeghe's writing. I've read quite a few of his novels, especially his historical novels. And he is a Saskatchewan author, and I really like The Englishman's Boy is one of my favorites. And there's one called The Last Crossing. Probably my favorite of his historical fiction ones is called A Good Man. And it's set during the time of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and then the First Nations people escaping into Canada and everything. And I really, really enjoyed that one. So this was apparently his first ever book. It was written back in the 1980s, and it's a short story collection. There was 2 short stories that I ended up giving 5 stars to. There was one called Cages. I just found the characters super interesting in that one. And one called The Expatriates Party. And that one, again, the characters were just really, really interesting, and the concepts were quite interesting. Otherwise, for the most part, everything got 3s and 3.5s and 4s. So I ended up giving the book overall 3.5, and I'm glad I read it because it's been on my shelf forever. And it'll go back with my Guy Vanderhaeghe collection on my shelf. And now I have read it. So that covers all the books that I read this month. And I'm looking forward to another good reading month, hopefully, in the month of May. I have quite a selection of books to read on my TBR. And again, hoping to finish that Robin Hood series by Stephen Lawhead that I loved that book so much, that second book. It's so funny because usually, you'll like the first book in a series probably better than the rest of them. But, that second book, I just loved his character so much. I just want to read it again right away. So that tells you how my month went. That my overall average was 4 stars, but I did find probably my favorite book of the year so far anyways. You have to be pretty good to pass that one in my year. So let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And also let me know what your favorite book of April was. And then please give me a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys soon on my next video. Check out right at the end here, I have a screen that'll show you my new book that's out. It is now published and available on Amazon. So check that out. And if you want to support me, that is a wonderful way to support me, is by buying my books. So I will see you guys soon on my next video. Bye.